Hello and welcome to the program. The title of my message to you today is Lessons from the Life of Joseph. The question is, what can we learn from the life of Joseph? The life of Joseph was loaded with revelation. So many things that Joseph did that I just admire that guy. And I'm sure when we arrive in heaven, it's one of those people I would like to meet immediately. I'd like to meet Paul the Apostle. I'd like to meet this gentleman, Stephen. I'd like to meet another guy, this gentleman who took over the whole city of Samaria, an evangelist. What's his name again? I'm trying to remember his name. He was the one that actually led the Ethiopian eunuch to Christ. And great men of God like that I'd like to meet, especially this guy called Joseph. So we're going to be looking deeper into the life of Joseph to see what we could learn from this man of God, so that as Christians, we can apply those same principles in our lives, so that as a result, God can bless us and lift us high, and lift us to the highest places of the land. Yeah, the evangelist I was trying to remember is called Philip. Awesome guy. So there are a lot of great characters that we want to meet in heaven and say, wow, you guys were just too much. You were just too much. So, Joseph, he had a dream, or several dreams, but his brothers were determined to make sure the dreams didn't come to pass. They did everything possible. They even contemplated killing him. Can you imagine this young boy that's been sheltered by his father's favorite? Suddenly they took him and they were discussing, should we kill him? And can you imagine what was going through the mind of this young boy? Like, God, why do I deserve this? But finally, God, through one of the brothers, said, no, let's do this. Rather, let us sell him to some of these Ishmaelites. So they sold him to the Ishmaelites, who took him away. And the Ishmaelites in turn sold him to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. So he was in Potiphar's house. And Joseph did everything in that house. He looked after that house like the house belonged to him. He looked after the house like it was his own. He did everything proper. He was a blessing to Potiphar, to the point where the Bible even made a powerful statement about Joseph. It said, and Potiphar prospered for Joseph's sake, which means if Joseph wasn't in Potiphar's house, Potiphar wouldn't have prospered on that level. Potiphar prospered because Joseph was in his house. Now let's look at the story of Joseph in Potiphar's house. Let's read Genesis chapter 39. Genesis chapter 39. And we'll take it from verse 1. It said, now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. He said, down there. When the Bible says down, that means you're going down, boy. Verse 2, the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. You see, when the Lord is with you, anything you touch will prosper. Anything you do will prosper because he's with you. He will order your footsteps. He will order your thoughts. He will order everything about you. But for you to have that kind of relationship with God, there's a price to pay. Verse 4. So Joseph found favor in his sight of his master, and served him. Then he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had he put under his authority. So Joseph became the main man in that house. Nobody was bigger than Joseph apart from Potiphar and his wife. Verse 5, so it was from time to time that he had made him overseer over his house and all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field because of Joseph. So my question to you is, where you are at the moment, is your master, your boss, being blessed for your sake? Verse 6, thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. Potiphar didn't know anything. All the figures, the details of how many animals, Potiphar did not know. Only Joseph knew. All that Potiphar knew to do was arrive at the table, eat, and just have a good time, knowing that everything was safe in the hand of Joseph. Now, Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. He was a good lad. He had muscles. He was macho. He looked good. Muscular and handsome. He was handsome in every way. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, lie with me. You're a Christian in your master's house. He's giving you charge of everything. He's gone to work. And his beautiful wife comes to you. Lie with me. What would you do? I know some Christians will say, well, if I don't do it, I'll probably get sacked. Or I won't get promoted. Heaven understands. Maybe if I do it, she will increase my salary. She will look after me better. So many Christians buckle. Verse 8. But he, Joseph refused and said to his master's wife, look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Can you imagine? He wasn't saying sinning against his master, but he was saying against God. God was not there physically, but he acknowledged God. And the Bible says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. When you fear God, he will load you with wisdom. So he said, how can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Verse 10. So it was as she spoke to Joseph day by day, which means she was coming every day. Some of us, if we don't buckle the first time, the second will buckle, or the third will buckle, or the fourth. But she kept on coming. Day by day, that he did not heed her, to lie with her, or to be with her. He was making sure he wasn't around her. Verse 11. But it happened about this time when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was inside, that she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. And so it was when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, that she called to the men of the house, and spoke to them, saying, see, he has brought into us a Hebrew to mock us. He came into me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And it happened, when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled and went outside. Can you see how the woman twisted the story? Those stories are happening today all over the world, even in Christendom. There are masters doing the same thing to Joseph. Verse 16. So she kept his garment with her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, the Hebrew servants, now they will stress the fact that you're a foreigner. The Hebrew servant is not one of us. Whom you brought to us came into me to mock me. So it happened as I lifted my voice and cried out that he left his garment with me and fled outside. So it was when his master heard the words which his wife spoke to him, saying, your servant did to me after this manner, that his anger was aroused. Verse 20. But let us stop there. At verse 19. The anger of the master was aroused. And guess what? The Bible said the master took him and put him in prison. At least, this guy that you've trusted, ask him about his side of the story. Today, people are sticking to one side of the story and delivering judgment. In Yoruba land, they have a saying that the elderly person who makes a decision based on one story, takes action based on one story, is a wicked elder. Wicked elder. That was Joseph in the house of Potiphar, finally in prison. But then when he arrived in prison, he could have sat in a corner, being upset. I didn't do this thing. They lied against me. That's how I ended up here. He could have been there, murmuring, moaning, grumbling, being grumpy. He could have kept malice. He could have been bitter. But no, Joseph did not, because the Lord was with him. So my question is, why? Why was Joseph like that? Because the Lord was with him. And from my own personal experience, when you are grumbling, when you are angry, when you are, murmuring, when you are, complaining, when God is speaking to you, you can't hear. The gift of the Spirit that you had before, you cannot manifest the gift because you are already filled up with things that God doesn't want inside of you. That is why if Joseph had been in a corner grumbling, murmuring, and moaning, he wouldn't have been able to interpret the dreams of the butlers. He wouldn't have been able to, because the gift cannot function. Because when God is speaking to you or deciphering things into your life, you won't be able to hear when you are in a bad mood, when you are angry always, frustrated, your face is hard everywhere you go. You won't hear a thing. In fact, you start hearing the devil and you think it's God. You will think it's God. So let's go into the Bible in the book of Genesis chapter 40. When Joseph in prison. Chapter 40, we take it from verse 12. And it says, and Joseph said to him, he was actually talking to the butler in the prison. This is the interpretation of your dream, because he was now interpreting the dreams of one of the butlers. This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Now, within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place. And you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, according to the former manner when you were his butler. He interpreted the dream of this person as to say that, look, you'll be reinstated. You'll be installed back to where you were before, to keep on looking after Pharaoh like you did before you ended up in prison. Verse 15. Verse 14. But remember me when it is well with you. And please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. That's another message entirely. Remember me when it is well with you. And please show kindness to me. make mention of me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. But you know what? God made that butler to forget about Joseph because God had not finished with Joseph yet. God had to prepare Joseph for leadership, and his time had not come. And you know what? The reason God also made the butler to forget, like my wife was sharing with me once, which is so interesting, he said the reason is very simple. If the man had remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh about Joseph, maybe Pharaoh would have said, listen, bring the young man out of prison and let him join you in the kitchen. So Joseph would probably be washing dishes and whatsoever in the corner when he was supposed to be ruler. He'd be washing dishes. And then when the butler tries to get him to bully him to do something and he refuses, the butler will be saying, listen, if it wasn't for me that told Pharaoh about you, you won't be here. You would have still been languishing in jail. I brought you out here and you don't want to obey me? That's what happens when you try to get man to fix it for you. They lift you up there and they point fingers at you. If it wasn't for me, you would have been nobody, stealing God's glory. And God hates it when you steal his glory. So, that's what happened in prison. Verse 15. For indeed I was stolen away from the land of Hebrews, and also I have done nothing here that they should put me into the dungeon. Can you imagine? Instead of even him saying, my brother sold me into slavery, he said I was stolen. You see, can you imagine? He could have just said, oh, my foolish brothers, my crazy brothers, this is what they did to me. When I get out of here, I'm going to mess them up. He said, no, I was stolen. Joseph, the man. Now, let's look at verse 40, chapter 41. It's a long one. I'm trying to figure out how I can complete this message. Okay, let's just move forward. Chapter 41 from verse 37. And it says, so the advice was given was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and the eyes of his servants. Joseph was interpreting Pharaoh's dream now. He's been out of prison, interpreting Pharaoh's dream. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? Can you imagine? People who are not worshiping God, who are worshiping idols, but they were able to recognize that the Spirit of God was in Joseph. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. Can you imagine? In a foreign land. Joseph did not go see somebody, the prime minister or the queen, please, or send someone, please put me in this position. No, God moved. He didn't go to a university. He didn't go to Oxford. He didn't go to Eton. He didn't go to Cambridge. The hand of the Lord was upon him. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. And he clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he made him ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried out before him, bow the knee. So he set him over all the land of Egypt. And then further on in verse 44, Pharaoh also said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no man may lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah. And he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. So Joseph went out all over all the land of Egypt. Joseph married the daughter of a priest of On, idol worshiper. So she didn't spoil his ministry. She didn't take him away from God. Joseph was still the same man of God. So some of you, is this woman, she's a witch. She's messed up my ministry. She's taking me away from God. She's messed up no way. Joseph married the daughter of a priest, idol worshiper, and he was still the real man of God. So that was Joseph, the prime minister. Then, when his brothers finally came in Genesis chapter 45, Genesis chapter 45, I'll take it from verse 1. When his brothers finally came, when I read this part, to be frank with you, I'm a strong man in my own right. But when I read this part, I weep. I weep. I weep. I weep for joy. This particular part always moves me. Genesis 45, from verse 1. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him. And he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud. Can you imagine these brothers who sold you into slavery? You haven't seen them for years. You still miss them. He wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. And Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." So they came near. Then he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." But now, this part, I always cry. I don't understand why. I've read so many parts of the Bible, but this part I always cry. Something comes over me. But now, do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years, the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now, it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and the Lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. So it's not you that brought me here. It is God. It's not your planning that made me part of your organization, that made me part of your family, that brought me here. It is God. So don't take God's glory. That's what Joseph is saying here. Don't worry. Don't be upset. It was God. Then now, after Jacob died, another lesson to learn there, that's in Genesis chapter 50. I'll take it from verse 15. Genesis chapter 50. I'll take it from 15. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "Perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him." Can you imagine? All these years, they're still harboring all these funny things in their hearts. So they sent messengers to Joseph, saying, "Before your father died, he commanded, saying," they're lying again, liars. Thus you shall say to Joseph, "I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now, please forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father." And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. The man is not even thinking along that line. He's just being himself, being caring, looking after his people. Already identified that God brought him to save his family, save the whole tribe of Israel. He's already settled with that. But these brothers now came to confront him with this terrible thing. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, "Behold, we are your servants." Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? Who am I? Am I God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it out, in order to bring about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now, therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones, and he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Joseph is a better Christian than many Christians today. You know, some people also, they can be so ungrateful. When Michael Jackson was alive, after arriving at the top, the greatest star in the whole world, oh, my father was nasty to me. Oh, he used to smack me. Oh, he used to beat me. Oh, he was terrible. Lord, he couldn't even see God. That God took him through his father for that kind of training to bring him to be the best in the world. Even the Williams sisters who played tennis, oh, their father was nasty to them. He was pushing them too hard. For goodness sake, you're earning millions today, blessing many across the whole world. You say you are Jehovah's Witnesses. Even Michael Jackson said he was Jehovah's Witness. So you couldn't see God in the whole of the equation. That's the sad thing about some people. Oh, he did this to me. Oh, he did that to me. In all things, give thanks to God. Because God said in his word, he said, all things shall work together for your own good. Everything, good and bad, will work together for your own good. In all situations, keep thanking God. He has not finished with you yet. You're on a journey, and that journey is to lift you high to the highest place of the land. So don't give up. Be like Joseph. Read more about his life, and let this way of life bless you. God bless you.